What up, what up, what up? Thank you for joining us for another edition of your favorite podcast, the Charles Coleman Podcast. I am your host, Charles Coleman, of course, and you are in the new home of Black Brilliance. Before we get started on today's show, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button down there if you're watching us on YouTube. Follow us, download us from whatever your favorite podcast platform is, iTunes, Apple, Spotify, Tidal, all of the above. You can find us, you can see us, you can hear us, you can know what we're doing and know where we are, the Charles Coleman Podcast. Super excited about today's show. A lot to talk about, a lot of things to go on, and really looking forward to our main discussion, which I will give you a hint, a preview, is called Do You Believe in the Negro? That is today's discussion. It's called Do You Believe in the Negro? But before we get to that, as you know, I got my dream team, my special group of contributors who I have on the show very often. And today I have one of my favorite members on the team, one of my real shooters, my man. Y'all know him, y'all love him. Cashmere, Curt, what's good with you, brother? How you feeling?
What's going on?
You all right?
I'm well, and yourself?
On you for you today. You know what I'm saying? We didn't do the applause. We did the Darth Vader on you today.
That's right. Appreciate that.
Good to have you on the show, man. Always good to see you. Always good to have you in here. You know, it's funny. I had a question. I actually thought about you the other day. I was getting dressed. I was getting ready to head out. You ever have like a personal like challenge that's some man shit that you just like get caught up in? So I'm going somewhere with this. So I had to change, my car battery died.
Oh wow.
Like I move around a lot, you know what I'm saying? And in terms of traveling, you know, I have an older car, and if I leave it for too long, the battery will die, right? And I hadn't gotten a battery change from since the pandemic started. So it was like, it was time. You know, I couldn't keep jumping in. It was just time. So I got a new battery, but I was like, I'm gonna put it in myself. Not a big deal, right? Like, yo, putting in a battery in a car is not that big of a challenge.
It's not.
But the way my car is set up, it's a truck. It's got some
hidden spots.
Yeah, some hidden spots going on. I didn't have the right tools. I needed like a flex, and so I ended up spending like, you know, changing a tire, switching our car battery. That's a 15-20 minute job. 25 minutes tops.
Right.
It's 40 minutes into this joint. I'm sweating. I'm talking to myself. I'm hyping myself up like, look, man, you got 2 degrees from Howard University. You could change your goddamn car battery. And I'm late for where I got to, like, but I was determined that this battery was not going to punk me. Have you ever had some man shit like that happen?
Definitely.
You were like, nah. Like, it was an easier solution. Like, I probably could have just figured out an easier solution, had somebody done it, paid somebody to do it. But I was like, personally, as a man, challenged by it. Like my manhood.
I'm not giving up.
Nah, I would not give up.
I'm not giving up.
And the shit damn near made me late. But, you know, I'm glad I'm not the only one because, you know, I felt like I really had. And then when I did it, though, I felt accomplished. I felt like I had done some shit.
Proud of you.
Yeah. Shut up, man.
You changed the battery.
All right. So let's go right into our shortcuts, brother. Something I saw on Instagram that I thought was interesting. Fat Joe.
Okay.
Who has had like he's had the illest come up if you think about like pandemic pivots.
Yes.
Pandemic ascendance. Like there are a lot of people who came out of the pandemic, or we're still in the pandemic, so I don't want to say that. But there are a lot of people who, you know, found their way through the midst of the pandemic to either pivot or, you know, create a space for themselves that was different from the space they were in before they went into the pandemic. I think the best example of that is probably, like the easiest one is probably D-Nice.
Okay.
Right, like D-Nice, like went into the pandemic, and in our space, like our community, meaning people who were familiar with and listened to hip hop, D-Nice was, shout out D-Nice anyway, like big shout out. He was very well known and extremely popular like in our space. But like the mass appeal that he now enjoys, like the dude had Michelle Obama on Club Quarantine at one point. Like he just did Carnegie Hall, like I said. Like,
right.
You know, that was not something that he did before the pandemic hit. He found a way to find a lane like within the pandemic. And I think the same is true for Fat Joe. Like Fat Joe, what he did in terms of getting on with verses was like a big deal. It gave him a level of relevance that he hadn't enjoyed in a long time. I mean, don't get me wrong.
I understand.
Joe's always been a monster. And he's been making moves in the industry, but his voice now carries a little bit more weight because of the verses and the association there in the yesterday's price is not today's price. And, you know, we all know that. I got to get a drop for that. I got to put that on the drop on the soundboard. But anyway, so Fat Joe was talking about the idea that ego killed New York City hip hop. He felt like when New York had its sort of last real hand on the throat of hip hop, like if you think about the very late 90s, early 2000s, before we get to the Cash Money regime taking over, when you're talking about Dipset, you're talking about G Unit, you're talking about, you know, Jay kind of sort of like really hitting his stride. You're talking about Nas being in his peak. He felt like there was a golden opportunity for New York to keep its stranglehold on hip hop that it really sort of feels entitled to. Like, we're New York guys, we understand that. But that ego killed it. And I thought that was really interesting because he made a lot of comparisons to people in other places, particularly the South, Atlanta, Louisiana, Cash Money, Lil Jon, Outkast, Organized Noise, and even in Houston, with what UGK and Scarface and what they did with Rap A Lot. And I thought that, I wondered, like, isn't that part of what hip hop does though? Like, isn't ego a part of hip hop? So I felt like it was kind of a conundrum.
I see where that you can have that thought. His perspective, I think, is more so from a hindsight kind of a perspective, because we needed to kind of lose that stronghold for us to even be exposed to the other territories that's kind of dominated hip hop over the past couple of decades.
We ain't touched it since. Like, real talk. Like, I mean, you know, you've had Pop Smoke, you've had people here and there. Right? But there hasn't been there have been people who've been big in New York or big in this region, but we have not seen that level of dominance in hip hop since.
Well, we shouldn't see it anymore. It's gone.
Like, you think it's just over?
It's over, baby. You know how Charles, we have this conversation all the time. There's never no coming back.
The price is not going down.
No.
Why do you think that it can't come back in terms of
come back for what?
New music, new artists.
That's what we're getting. Every new region that's popping up or emerging on the scene is new stuff, new culture, new nuances, new takes on it. That's what hip hop is.
Right, but you don't think that there's space for an evolution of that in New York? You think that, like, what we've seen?
Well, the expectation from a New York hip hop artist is totally different from anywhere else in the world.
What do you mean?
So it's kind of like you're forced to wear a particular uniform when you're from New York, right?
Okay,
but you can play the sport very well. But you know what I'm saying? But if you're from here, nah. You got to come a certain kind of way.
Gotcha.
And if you don't, we don't necessarily accept it. And then now as an artist, you feel like you can't really create because they're not gonna like me at home. It's like playing for the Knicks. You're great everywhere else you go. When you come here, what happened? Right. What happened?
What happened?
Same sport. What happened? It's New York, baby.
Is that good for hip hop? Ultimate, like, big picture, right? It's like, so to use your analogy, they always say, like, it's not good for the NBA when the Knicks suck because it's one of their biggest markets.
Right.
Like, do you think that a similar, I mean, obviously not for similar reasons, but do you think that an argument can be made that when New York hip hop is in the trash or it's not really doing what it should be doing from a streaming standpoint, from a number standpoint, that like matters?
It matters to New York. Only because now we think everything else is garbage. You know what I'm saying?
Word.
So we become a more cynical kind of a critique when our stuff isn't up to par.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. I mean, I think, what I've learned is going other places. Like, I went to school in DC, and then I have family from Memphis, and I travel a lot. I've learned over the years that like the people outside of New York really don't care about New York hip hop like that.
Right.
Like they really don't. Like there are artists that we love and revere that people are like, yeah, I know like 1 or 2 songs from them. You know what I'm saying? And so just to hear you say that confirms what I kind of sort of already knew to be true, which is a real interesting thing. But we're gonna move on with respect to our shortcuts. Next shortcut. I was thinking the other day about the way that we treat our artists. And this is not necessarily, like this is still a music-oriented conversation. I thought about how we treat some of our artists in terms of sort of pushing them into retirement. Right? Like every time you get a real seasoned artist that drops some work, like a Drake or Beyonce, particularly like a Beyonce. I mean, there are other examples of it. The question always comes up, like, are they washed? Is such and such washed? Is such and such trying to retire? And I may have my thoughts. Again, I don't really want no Beehive smoke. So
right.
I'm easy.
Take it easy.
Real easy. Right. I want no Beehive. If you listening, please understand. I want no problems with y'all. I really want zero problems with y'all. I'm just asking the question whether we try to put our artists in retirement homes prematurely. Because if you look across cultures, right? Mick Jagger, Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, they still be touring.
Right.
They be outside.
Right.
Bruce Springsteen be selling out the Meadowlands. Right? Bon Jovi.
You said the Meadowlands.
The Meadowlands. Yeah, Alice in Chains. Like, we could just go down the list.
Right.
And these are artists who haven't been at their peak in well over 20 years.
Right.
Not talking about 10, 20 years. But they're still showing, selling out shows. And nobody is like, yo, y'all washed, give it up.
Right.
But with us, like Usher Usher does his residency in Vegas. People are like, oh, he must be washed. Like that must mean he's washed. Like, why do we do that to our artists?
I think because we give our artists social characteristics that they don't necessarily deserve. So other cultures allow their artists just to be that, an artist.
Word.
We take the popularity of our artists and now put them on a pedestal to represent more than just the artistry. So
yeah, I mean, I was having a conversation about this not too long ago, and the usual discussion of how our community's icons and leaders are chosen. Right. And so you would never have white America looking to Larry Bird to speak out about, the working class poor. Right. Like, even though he's from French Lick, Indiana, and grew up working class poor, you would still never see white Americans expecting that. But with us, our athletes and our entertainers are the ones that we look to and who have the microphone. Right. And I struggle with whether that's a chicken and egg situation, because on one level it's like, well, it makes sense that they would speak because they have the platform, they have the ears, they have the microphones, and other people do not. But then, and this is obviously changed a little bit with social media because more people have platforms. You can sort of create your own platform. But there's still that sense, right? Like there's still the expectation of a LeBron or Jay-Z or Diddy or somebody else like that to speak out. Right? And we're the only culture that does that. So you think that that's what ends up, the popularity piece is what ends up pushing us to push our icons further into retirement or earlier into retirement? I
think it's that, and it's kind of a combination of also like think about family life, right? Like you mentioned earlier, you went away to school, right? So in that activity while you were gone, did you ever feel like there were people in your family that kind of put the weight of the success of the family on you because you went away to school? So I did not, that's not personally my story. Like I'm not gonna sit here and rap that story. I sold crack and had to get my moms out there. Right. Like I'm not rapping that story. But
it is a very legitimate story. It is a story that I do know a number of people who I was not, but who were first generation college students felt like, yo, my family has sacrificed everything to get me to this point. And if I don't make good on that, then I'm blowing it for everybody else.
And I think that same ideology and way of thinking is what we put on our artists. They're in a space that
y'all made it.
So don't blow it for the rest of us.
And so you think,
but they never signed up for that. They never
signed up for that. And so you think that there's a shelf life with that then? Yes,
because after a certain as you matriculate in your success, the further and further you get away from that public opinion, it's like, nah, it's time for you to go. You got to retire now. Because even if you do start talking about this stuff, you ain't gonna be talking about my viewpoint. You're too far gone.
You're too far gone from it. I see.
So now it's time to retire. Right.
You're no longer here.
Retire. Give somebody else space.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. That brings me to our last quick shortcut of the day. My question is, in today's day and age, where people have the ability to be like, I ain't doing that. I ain't code switching. I'm showing up how I show up. And you're gonna eat that. You're gonna take that whatever way I give it to you. And I'm not trying to air anybody out. I'm just saying that there is a freedom, a space that exists for people to be authentic in a way that, for us as a community, did not exist before.
Correct.
Does that mean that we're losing icons? Like, are we losing icons in our community? I mean, like, let's just say that we accept Beyonce as a current day icon. I think that that's more than fair. Do we have a list of current day icons? Like, I mean, I think Regina King makes the list. I think Taraji makes the list. But like, does that freedom of showing up authentically and just not having to be sort of as polished and as intentional, at least in the sense of how you appear, your political correctness, your respectability, and this is not a slight or a knock to any of the people I've named. Does that take away from the notion of like them being like icons that are representative of the culture?
I don't think it takes away. I think how we define icons definitely has changed over time. For me personally, an icon had to have a particular body of work, where I seen the growth of their rookie season to their proverbial last season, you know what I mean? Where you can see how they got better or changed over time.
Or evolved,
right? So now, though, with everything being so instant, you can make an icon in a week now. If you get a controversial thing happens on Monday,
sure,
you get canceled by Wednesday, you pop back up Thursday, you hot again Friday.
She won.
All that happens in a week. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, but that used to happen over 6 to 7 years. Now it happens in 1 week. So if we gave a person 20 years ago icon status for how they stumbled and tripped a little bit and got back in line, and we say, oh wow, we champion that person, it's only fair that we can do that now, but it's just happening a lot sooner and faster.
All right, unscripted lightning round. I'm going to throw some names out to you, and I need to know icon or not. Cardi. No, Cardi F. Yeah, nigga, Cardi.
Not an icon yet. Potential. But not an icon yet.
Megan.
Stallion or good?
Stallion. And good.
Good, possibly, because she has a body of work and an amount of time in the spotlight.
What has it done?
What is it supposed to do?
What memorable? Name 3 movies Megan Good was in.
Jump in the Broom.
Never saw it.
Pretty funny. I don't know, Megan Good movies.
Well, then you can't call her icon, my guy.
I can't give you 3 Cardi B songs neither.
So then she doesn't qualify either.
I haven't given you an icon yet, so keep going.
Okay, all right, fair. All right, fair. Nicki Minaj.
Yes.
Rihanna.
Definitely.
Okay. J. Cole.
Possibly.
Nipsey.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Nipsey.
Yeah. I did that on purpose.
Culturally an icon, but
I did that on purpose.
Yeah, but a controversial person, right?
Right.
So depending on how you gauge things that you respect based on lineage of work,
Right.
I would say icon.
I think Nipsey is a cultural icon. I don't think that he's an icon within hip hop in the traditional sense.
Fair.
Right? Like I think that, and don't get me wrong, I have rocked with Nipsey for a long time before Victory Lap or any other thing. Like I'm talking about mixtape Nipsey when he was out the trunk, right? And so it's not like I'm unfamiliar with his music. I'm actually very familiar with his music and his catalog, but part of being an icon is not necessarily being just sort of dope. Like he was unquestionably dope, but more so, what did you do with that? That's why I'm not knocking Megan Good, but I'm like, well, what did her art move? What did it move? Nipsey's impact and his imprint is a cultural one. And so that's why I tend to agree with you. He is unquestionably a cultural icon. In hip hop, I think he could have been. I think that as he was, Victory Lap being his last major studio recorded album, definitely said that he was on the way.
Definitely on the way.
Which is why I'm like, we were robbed. But to your point, might have been, but wasn't there yet, right? Anyway, we got to move on. We are going to our favorite segment with this guy. Heading up on Smooth is Cashmere, where Curt gets a chance to really wax poetic about what he, as a member of the contributor dream team, wants to talk about. So take it away, Curt. What are we talking about today?
Being a plus size guy my entire life, this
said plus size.
Yeah.
Remember back in the day it was husky?
Husky, like
Oh, it was
husky. Yeah. I had a whole section.
It was slim. I was slim.
Word?
Yeah, I was. Was it slim? I think it was slim. It was slim, and it was like regular, and it was husky.
That's where I was at.
You was just husky.
Husky, baby.
Husky, baby.
That's it.
Come on, get some of this.
All girth. You know what I'm saying? But now, this everything being so tight and fitted nowadays, it's not sustainable anymore. I think loose clothing is going to kind of
flowing,
very flowy, very, very non-restricting. We're going to get a lot of which in turn is going to create a dynamic of a lot of shapes. So shapes is going to be the thing this year.
Think so?
I think so. Yeah.
So is that the thing with the glasses? You have on some geometric sort of glasses. You're ahead of the game.
I'm just putting it out there, letting you know I'm ready.
It's interesting. So the thing about fashion that I always find very fascinating is the intersection between form and function.
Okay.
And I think that we heard a lot of folks during the quarantine and I put this pandemic weight on. I got to get to the gym. I got to get it off of me. So and so forth. Niggas ain't doing that.
Nah.
I ain't seen too many people really come out.
Ain't no uptick in the gym activity?
Yeah, like you said, it's not coming back down, Jack. Like you said, it's not coming back.
It's not.
It went up.
Staying up
and
there.
It's staying up.
That's right.
I mean, I know some people who really did get back into shape and made it happen. Shout out to them and anybody who has fitness goals, who's working on their goals. I want you to achieve them. But realistically speaking,
right.
Some people, I think, and the interesting thing about where we are, if you think about the timing of the pandemic, I think that last fall, people still were in their minds telling themselves, I'm going to be able to get back in that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I'm going to hold on to that because I'm going to still be able to wear it. I just got to tweak. And by this summer, they're like, nah.
You know what? Dust rag. Dust rag.
Just let it go.
Let it go.
So the flowing of it makes sense because of like comfort and people adjusting. A lot of people who may be adjusting to their like post-pandemic size.
Yeah.
I also know for women, there are some standard rules around what looks good, from a styling yourself perspective versus, for a body type.
Okay.
So if you're someone who is hippie, for example, you might want to avoid the horizontal stripes, right? Like if or vertical stripes are going to elongate you in certain ways. But what I'm asking you is, as a guy who, is self-identified, plus size, husky, bigger, however you want to say it, what are your rules around like how you curate your look or your wardrobe in terms of what you stay away from, what you sort of gravitate to, what are your rules that you have found like work really well?
Personally, the number one thing is fit. It has to fit, right? A lot of times we get caught up in a particular look, but it don't come in your size, you know? So
wear your size.
That's first. No matter what you know, whether you want to do horizontal or vertical, make sure it's in your size. Right. And then after that, it's more personal after that, for me personally. Think about men's fashion within a totality, right? Say, you know, you do a lot of gentleman stuff where you would have to put a suit on, right? Mm-hmm. Your suit is no different from my suit when you think about it. The only thing that's going to differentiate us when we walk through a room is size. Okay. If I try to put your suit on and walk through the room, I'm not going to look as good as you in that suit. But if I put my size on, we look the same. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's actually a really good point now that you say it. Like, putting on a suit that fits me, that's made for me, is going to look a certain way.
Correct.
You putting on a suit that fits you and that's made for your body is also going to look a certain way. So the only difference is going to be, you know, our body types, but the actual suit itself, if you're wearing your size and I'm wearing my size, is going to fit very similarly, which is interesting.
And we're going to look equally.
Yeah, you know? I get it.
And I don't think a lot of people, men or women, understand that concept. It's not necessarily, you know, you have different types of minds, right? You have people out here who just run and just buy labels because they assume the label was going to make them look good. That's fair, right? But if Gucci in the wrong size still looks bad.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Equally as bad as H&M in the wrong size. It's the wrong.
Tell me about it.
Get your size and you look great. Own your look, though.
Own your look.
Own your look.
You should put that on a shirt.
Thinking about it.
We're going to transition now into our main topic of the day. Do you believe in the Negro? And this, you know, for all intents and purposes, this is likely going to be a reoccurring theme series conversation on the Charles Coleman podcast because it's just so layered and complex.
Correct.
The idea of community is, in some respects, overused. And in other respects, it may not be overused, but the concept is something that is undervalued in as much as people talk about it, but they don't really live it.
Right.
From your perspective, from where you sit, right? You are someone who, at different points, has been about the business of entrepreneurship, you know, economic opportunity in our community, financial literacy. Also clearly invested in the development of young people from a self-esteem standpoint around grooming and appearance. So you dabble in a number of different elements of togetherness, right? Like of unity and of galvanizing in that space. What do you see? Because Dr. Claude Anderson, the author of Powernomics and a number of other books, lays out a number of different rules for community, like what it is, what takes a community. And before I, go into all of that, in fact, I'll just encourage anybody who hasn't read it to read it. It's a wonderful book. And he talks a lot about what the rules are to building a community. I want to hear from you. What do you see as, given the different things that you're involved in, what do you see as the most critical elements of community building? And how do we effectively engage those things, or what can we do more to better engage them? Because to me, it's our belief in the Negro, and I'll explain what I mean by that, but I want to hear from you first.
I think building up identity has been on the top of my list. I think kind of the mind, I was raised under the if you knew better, you'll do better kind of a mindset growing up. So any information that I've seen or acquired that's helped me in any kind of way, I've never shied away of spreading it and sharing it, hoping that someone else can share the same experience I've had. But I think we have to groom people into their self-identity first, and I think that gives them the motivation to go out here and build a community. Now, once we kind of start, I think then we can define what that should look like or could look like or shouldn't look like, but we have to kind of start the engine a little bit.
So that conversation about identity is a tricky one because, we've talked about the idea of there's assumed identity, which is not necessarily authentic. It's just something that you decided to adopt. Then there is embraced identity, which is something that you authentically connect with and identify with and sort of like really accept. This is who I am, and I'm going to stand in this proudly and firmly. And then there's identity that's forced upon you, which we see very much so in terms of Black America, foundational Black America. This is what y'all are. This is what y'all do. This is what y'all are about. Given what we're uniquely positioned, Black Americans that is, how do you engage that conversation when you're talking about the first thing is identity and understanding who you are and so on and so forth? That's a real challenge. Because in some ways, if you don't at least identify who the people are who are supposed to convey this, it's not clear in as much as you have the blind leading the blind. Because if that sense of identity, that sense of self, it's not like it just pops up one day and it's just there. It has to come from somewhere. So if you are in a space where none of the people who are around you are aware of it or see it or embrace it, where are you supposed to get that from? Like you and I might have it, right? But then how do you access that? Or how do you expect people to access that when everyone around them doesn't have any more of a sense of identity of self than someone, who's younger, who was a child?
I don't know. I really don't know. When you put it that way, it makes it harder to answer. I would like to believe that if there's an appetite for anything, you sort out what you're hungry for, right? So we could be standing in a pizza shop, surrounded by all these different options of pizza. But if I want steak, it doesn't matter that we're in the pizza shop. You get what I'm trying to say?
I get it.
Eventually, once we get out of here, I'm going to go seek a steak.
But if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat.
Well, that's true too. But that's not what we're saying. We're not saying, are we hungry?
I actually was joking, but no, I get it. I think for me, when I talk about the belief in the Negro, community requires a certain degree of boundary. And for us, I see it as, in some ways, physical boundaries. I mean, that's a different conversation in terms of being able to police ourselves. Boundaries take many forms. One example of boundaries, I think, are rules. Okay. Right? Like, I think part of, and Dr. Anderson talks about this, one of the tenets of community is you have an agreed set of rules that you decide are going to govern your space, your community. Like, look, we are respecting our elders. We're taking care of our elders. Look, we believe that as a collective, discipline of our young people is everyone's job, right? Like, I mean, just whatever your rules are, right? Like those boundaries. Another tenet of community building clearly is an independently functioning economic system. Okay. And for me, that's where the notion of believing in the Negro becomes paramount. Because I feel like anytime I talk about community building and what it looks like, I get so many more people who are telling me why it wouldn't work, why we would never do that. Oh, they'll never do that. We'll never do that because we can't, so on and so forth. It's met with a bunch of pushback in ways that I just feel like maybe you not with it. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you would not decide to like actively go and seek, I need a black dentist, I need a black banker, I need a black tailor, I need a black butcher. You know what I mean? Maybe you not with that. But part of it, I feel like, is a lack of belief. I'm constantly writing. I'm working on a book. And in my book, I have a chapter called Do You Believe in the Negro? And as part of it, I looked through hip hop because that's a big theme of the book, hip hop, and sort of its impact on my life. And I did some research about the number of lyrics that talk about, from hip hop artists, that talk about having a Jewish lawyer. I can't tell you, like Fab talked about it, Jada talked about it. I got a Jewish lawyer that'll eat the case.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me as a black attorney, I was offended. And I know that a number of other black attorneys were highly offended. Like, literally, off the top of my head, I was able to identify, well, off the top of Google's head, I was able to identify 35 different lyrics in contemporary hip hop artists that were sort of like, oh, I have a Jewish lawyer. That is not a belief in the Negro. That is not how you build community. So all the other shit people talking about, oh, well, you know, we got to da-da-da-da-da. When you are putting professional people on a pedestal, like I got a Jewish account, so he messed with the O's. You know what I'm saying? Like when you put the people who are essential for providing you foundational services, but don't belong to your community on a pedestal, that message that you send to everybody else is like, yo, these people are not worthy. That is not a belief in the Negro. And it is a serious disruption to community building for me.
Right.
And, you know, we talk about buy black, spend your money black, so on and so forth. But we also don't talk about the fact that, and you can probably speak to this experience more than I can, the idea of like, number one, everybody wants a discount. They want it for cheaper, right? Like if buying black should mean like building community, believing in the Negro should mean like, not only am I going to pay you for this, I'm not looking for a hookup, I'm going to pay you what you've asked me for. Right. Because I don't go nowhere else. I don't go to Burberry and be like, yeah, so them loafers, them driving loafers.
That been here 6 months.
They been here, you know, they ain't moved. Let me get them for you said 800? I give you 240.
Word.
We don't do that to anybody else but ourselves.
The audacity. I don't want to bash out people.
It's not bashing out people. It's telling the truth, though.
I think it's a lack of respect. You know, when I see you representing a particular brand, I identify you with the Jukes move. You know, hey, Charles, you come on now. You know, 500, come on, baby. You know what I'm saying? Immediately. I don't get a backstory of why you chose the $500 price point. None of that. If I see it's you and yours, in my mind, I say you a 240 kind of dude. I'm willing to go up to 220.
Wow. So you think that is a function of programming where we don't necessarily even value ourselves?
Correct.
You don't believe in the Negro?
You do not. And it's a lot harder to try to force that on someone without teaching them how to even identify the Negro and building the respect for the Negro.
So where do you start? I mean, you know, let's no, you know, I get it. What would you say is if you had to, because this is obviously a larger conversation, and we can't be on this podcast all the time. We just ain't got that kind of bread at this network. What would be the one thing that you would want people to think about with community building?
The one thing?
The first thing, anything. Like, you don't have to be the most important thing, but
like I said,
something simple.
Identity. It has to start there. You have to be able to say, hey, I am a Negro and I'm worth the effort that I put out to society.
So here's what I'll do, you know, to end this portion of this conversation and this dialogue. A lot of people might sort of shudder at the use of the word Negro, but when I use it, I'm using it very intentionally because I'm referring to a period in time. Negro came as an evolution from post-slavery, post-Reconstruction, but pre-Jim Crow, right? So Negro, and I mean, it was used after used after Jim Crow as well, but like Negro was actually like a respectable term because we know the hard ER.
Yeah, it was different.
The hard ER was different. And that was used because these Negroes had gotten a little too sedity. These Negroes were going to school. These Negroes were starting businesses. These Negroes were running communities, right? So that's why I use the term, do you believe in the Negro? Because I'm referring very poignantly and very directly to a specific period of time where we clearly had demonstrated the potential for self-sustaining communities on our own in such a way that it wasn't even a threat.
Well, when you say on our own, but those, if we're talking period piece, right?
Correct.
During that time, that's during segregation.
You're still on our own, though.
Well, is it really?
It ain't. It's not with
Because
the assistance or support of other entities.
Well, I couldn't go nowhere else, so I had to buy black.
Is that a bad thing?
No, it's proven that it hasn't been. But think about society today. You're removing option. It's like, wow.
So you're thinking like it's up, meaning once the option is out there, it's done.
It's done.
You think it's not going back?
We have to, again.
Kurt, you gotta believe in the Negro, baby.
I do believe in the Negro, but the evolved Negro.
What does that look like?
I hope it looks like segregated Negro, to be honest with you. But it will be different. It's a choice now. There's nothing wrong with saying.
You want some Malcolm X shit today.
I'm not, brother. I'm just saying.
I'm not, like, listen, I'm really not mad, and I think that all jokes aside, I think that any person who would not, and because here's the thing, I started the conversation off by identifying the importance of boundaries.
Got you.
Right, like segregation is a hard boundary. It's a really hard boundary, but it's a boundary, right? So anyone who can conceptualize in today's space that there was no value in what community did or how community flourished when we were only left to fend for ourselves amongst ourselves, I would have some serious like intellectual qualms with. It doesn't mean that you have to go as far as to say like, I believe in segregation. I think that for many people is too much of a jump. And I understand why it's too much of a jump. But I also think that, again, there is a need for the notion of boundaries in terms of our culture, in terms of our spaces, because we have been duped into believing that like, well, if y'all want to be over here, then you got to let us be able to come to the porch, sign out your culture, and bring it back in whatever condition that we want.
Right, whenever we want.
Whenever we want, right? And that is sort of that's the trick bag. In such a way where we feel like, oh, now we have opportunity. So instead of when I get some bread trying to buy my block and keep it from gentrifying, I want to move out. I want to go somewhere else. That's not how you build community. In fact, that's how you disrupt community. That's how you unravel community. So even though the word segregation, of course, because of its historic connotations, carries with it a really, really sordid history of denial, let's maybe transition that word in this conversation to boundaries.
Fair.
Boundaries. Like we gotta have some. I talk about boundaries all the time. Your non-negotiables. What are your non-negotiables? That's a boundary.
That's a very strong boundary.
It's a strong boundary, right? A community building will not exist if we do not have boundaries, because how else are you going to actually define the community? So for me, I want you to think about, for our listeners who are engaged in this conversation, I want you to think about, do you truly believe in the Negro to the extent that you are willing to support those businesses, even as they may be inconvenient and in the interest of helping to build an independent economic structure? And number two, what are our boundaries as a community? Where do you think our boundaries are? Where do you think they should be? I think that's what listeners from this part of the conversation should take away and think about as we move forward. All right, what up? Welcome back to another episode of Rules of Engagement. This is our favorite conversation, the favorite part of the Charles Coleman podcast. We got shortcuts, we got contributor segments, we got main conversations, but everybody loves Rules of Engagement. This is our conversation about love, sex, and relationships. I got two of my dream team members on with me. Before we get started, do yourself a favor. Make sure you have liked, subscribed, shared, streamed the Charles Coleman podcast. This is your new favorite podcast, the new home for Black brilliance, where everywhere podcasts are heard. You can find us on YouTube and everywhere else. Tell a friend to tell a friend. But today I am privileged to have, continuing with the Triangle Offense, two of my favorite dream teamers with me, my dream team of contributors. To my left, I got my man, Cashmere Curt. Underrated, but never understated. My man, how you doing, brother?
I'm well, and yourself?
I'm good, brother. And then, of course, I've got to my right, the professional winner. You know her, you love her, the boss at 593 Washington, the leader of the Blue Notes. Gloria Sharuban in the building. How you feeling?
I'm feeling real good. How are you?
I see you out here in this 10th anniversary.
You know we got to give it up. You know
I'm not mad at that.
The decade.
I'm not mad at that. 10 years of Blue Smoke. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Today on Rules of Engagement, we are going to talk about mixed messaging. Because I see a lot of that get caught in relationships, mixed messages. Like, Curt, one time you and I were talking, you said, well, you know, we got to be adults about these very adult situations that we in.
It's a fact.
And I've been in spaces where, like, as a guy, I have been told that you could try to do something that you're treating a woman. There are a lot of times where, as a man, you're treating a woman with dignity in class.
Right.
But I've heard and been told and learned that you can make a woman feel too special. Like, if y'all are just smashing, like, you can't hold hands. Like, because apparently that sends a mixed message. Like, you start holding hands, now all of a sudden, yo, this man may want me to be his girl. Nah, we walking down the street, I just held your hand. Like, we went to Gray's Papaya and, you know, and now it's a mixed message. So I want to hear from both of you guys, Curt and from G, like, what are the things that you don't do? Like, what's on the no-fly zone list of stuff you can't do if you don't want to send the message of, like, being in a relationship?
Being in a relationship with someone that can get the message mixed up.
So you saying, like, from jump?
You just got to be honest.
No. But sometimes you are.
Right.
But, if, you know.
And that goes both ways. In your honesty, they have to be honest.
About their ability to handle it?
Don't hold my hand until I'm your girl. Your hand will never be held.
That's real.
I mean, but sometimes mixed messages is exactly that. It's mixed messages. You might think I'm caring more than you are expecting me to. Like, it's
okay.
Just, I'm just
cold
checking
as ice.
in.
Okay,
I'm just saying, I might just be checking in genuinely on some just checking, and you're reading more into it. You know what I'm saying?
Has that happened to you?
That definitely has happened. You know, to the point where you're just like, all right, I'm not checking in anymore because you're starting to think that means that I'm really checking for you, but I really just wanted.
So what you want us to know is that your pimping is that strong.
I'm just saying there are pimping that requires some withdrawing.
Oh, so you sprinkle too much, and you gotta take it back.
You gotta pull it back because the expectation is more than you are willing to give, but they misunderstood my check-in.
I appreciate that because, you know, it's an honest thing. But I want to go back to what Curt said because that's really mind blowing. Have you ever had that? Because in all my time, right? I've never had a woman say, don't do that, like on the front end, right? Like, don't hold my hand unless I'm your girl. Like, they take it and then be like, and I think that there's a level of manipulation there. Like, as opposed to being like.
Whole manipulation?
Yeah. I mean, seriously, like, because think about it. If you're going to make an interpretation or an assumption about what something means, why not be clear about it? Like, if you're not trying to manipulate the situation, why not just say, like Curt said, yo, you know what? I don't really think we should do this unless this is the space.
Correct.
I mean, I get that, right? However, I feel like
I've never had that
it's not manipulating. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's bred a certain kind of a way. You know what I'm saying? How she feeling is how she feeling. If you holding my hand and we walking down the street and that's got me feeling some kind of way, like we really booed up and this is more than what it really is, and then you on your smash agenda, that's just how I'm feeling. Like, why are you mad at the fact that me and you holding hands gives me that impression?
But no. I'm not mad about the fact that it gave you that impression, and rather than just be clear about it, you chose to not say nothing
make an
assumption.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that usually that kind of behavior, it's a subtle impression on her. It's not a manipulation. You know what I'm saying? I just don't like your choice of words. You know what I mean?
I think, but so here's the thing. I think that at certain points, right, when you, what?
Nothing.
No, go ahead.
The choice of words is crazy. Like,
you think manipulation is too strong?
No, I think manipulation is the right word.
Yeah, I mean,
how is it manipulating?
Because you are entering into it. You are choosing not to be direct. Like, you know that you're interpreting it a particular way, right? Now, he may or may not have meant it that way, but rather than get clarity, you just like, I'm going to just let it rock. I'm going to let him hold my hand. I'm going to let him do these things because I know that's the impression it's giving me. And at the same time, your expectations are building
Right.
on that man. And that's like, without any conversation, it's a little manipulative.
No, it's not manipulative. You have to. You in yourself need to
Go
understand.
ahead. Let her know.
At the end of the day, you're gonna be dealing with a spectrum of women, and it's incumbent. The burden is on you.
Why? Why is it on me?
Because
I'm not
you're
making
the
the
one that's
assumption.
in the bag. About
I'm not the one making the assumption.
I'm not.
She is.
I'm just saying. But at the end of the day, you gotta understand that there's certain. If you don't. At this stage, if you don't understand that there's certain behavior that's gonna. If you DMing me, if you texting me every morning, good morning. You hit me every afternoon. Good afternoon. You know what I'm saying? You checking in before you go to bed every night. We in a relationship.
No, we're not.
That's a whole relationship.
No, we're
we
not.
are committed. We almost married.
That's
3 points a day,
This is
bro.
exactly
7
this
days
is,
a week.
Now you
I
done
don't-
manipulated
I talk
me
to
into
you
now you
more
done
than my mama.
Now you done manipulated me. I'm like, wait, hold
Word.
on. How? What? I woke up.
Vagina guilt now.
Right. There you go.
No, stop it.
Please
The
explain
problem
that
is
to the
y'all
people.
always on the
Explain
run.
that to the people,
Yeah,
please.
come on, cut it out, man. We supposed to be decent human beings. Right? So if I, I want to see
Not
if you're all right
decent
for the
human
day. Hey,
beings.
what's going on? Hope you have an outstanding day.
Every
today.
day
There's
you want
nothing
to
wrong
know.
with that though.
Yeah.
Because
That it translates
exactly-
into relationships
It
to us.
translates that
But
'cause
you
you make-
mad. You see what happens when we try to tell y'all what y'all behavior do? You don't want to believe it, and then you get denying. But you want us to be mad because we feel like we cool and in a very intimate
why
space
would it
because you
hurt
holding
you?
my hand.
But why would it hurt you? Because the same way that you said, yo, intimately, I could just be checking in and he's taking it more than what it is. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So what? So why is it that it's beyond you to just say, like, listen, you don't gotta really check in on me every day like that unless this is where you're trying to go. What's wrong with that? It's so simple. It's so direct. Why? It's too logical for y'all?
Yep.
No,
What?
You can't handle it. Now you in your bag. Now you went from checking in to ghosting me now because I hurt your freak.
Sounds like you can't handle it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it sounds like you
Okay.
are upset
All right.
that he's gonna stop texting if you say that. That's what it sounds
All
like.
right. All right, listen, I'm just trying to explain to you what it is. If you don't want to believe me, don't take my advice. But
It's not that I wanna believe you.
Now, the response usually isn't a slight moderation of the 3 times a day text. It's a disappearance because now
If he's not your man, though, why does it matter?
Yeah. And let me talk to your girlfriend since you got a problem with these morning texts.
Facts,
Period.
because she might be eyed
She
with it.
loves
this
it.
is the level
She
of
loves it.
savagery that
That's
we
the one who told me to do
constantly-
it. We thought you would like it.
Because we know.
We thought you would like
the
that.
collective
Shit. Exactly.
Yeah, I can't
top
even take it.
behavior that you're not doing if you don't want to send that message.
Kissing in the mouth.
Wow.
It's not going down.
Not gonna kiss in the mouth.
Nah,
if
that's too intimate.
it's too intimate.
Yeah.
Will you hold her hand?
Where? In public?
In her hand. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, in public.
Yeah, I'll do that.
You'll do that, but you
Yeah.
won't kiss in the mouth.
Nah,
On the lips, but no tongue.
none of that.
So no kissing.
None of that.
Mm.
Dang.
Unless that's me.
You pounding her?
That got to be me. You
You
want
taking
that
it down?
Mouth on mouth. It is what it is.
I mean,
Everyone gets
mouth
taken
on
down.
mouth, just no tongue.
Everybody gets taken.
Tongue
down.
is intimacy. When you getting whole tongue, it's intimacy.
top behavior. No go.
No go.
Top behavior.
I'm saying no tongue. No tongue is
No,
if
that's
tongue,
that's it.
tongue is intimacy. We in it. You hitting me with the whole swath. We together.
That's it.
Wow. You go to bed. You go together real bad.
we in it. It's together.
A morning
It's
text
us
and
forever.
tongue. Yeah, we're married. So
It's over.
that's it. Exclusive.
You keep it simple.
It doesn't take
A
a lot.
peck on the lips, I could deal with that. That's
You
not
could deal with that?
crazy. But when you putting that tongue down, we together.
You learn something new every day, and that's why you come to the Charles Coleman podcast. That's going to do it for Rules of Engagement, our conversation on love, sex, and relationships. I hope that you enjoyed yourself for another episode of your new favorite podcast, the Charles Coleman Podcast. This is the new home of Black Brilliance. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And until next week, we'll see you soon. Peace.